Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of the Mash Bill. Now this is a segment where I, Matt, the Dice Chucker from the Literary Gamers, mash up a bourbon and a board game. Now, at first it's going to be bourbon and board games, but hopefully we'll move on to scotches and other whiskeys, maybe even some other spirits as time goes on. But for now, we're keeping it to bourbon and board games. And today, we're going to be talking about one of the more experimental bourbon companies in Kentucky right now. And this is Jefferson. Jefferson's. Now, Jefferson's is one of those companies that keeps trying to push the envelope little by little. And this bottle right here, called Jefferson's Ocean, is where they push the envelope the most, at least in my opinion. I haven't had their Napa Valley bourbon yet, but I'm looking to try it soon. So, what makes this one so interesting? It's Jefferson's standard mash bill, of course, over 50% corn, 51% corn, for the billing of bourbon, but they've always had this very small batch style. Now, they are still considered an independent bourbon company. If you go on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail nowadays, they don't appear. They're on the artisanal bourbon trail down there. And what they've done is they've made their bourbon, and they package it in a container, and they sail it around. Now, this one is voyage number 20. So what that does to the bourbon is it adds to the flavor. The first time, at least according to our tour guide, they did this, they had a few barrels actually on the deck of the ship, and when they would open it up, the bourbon was like a black and very syrupy. And they refine that nowadays to be more like the regular bourbon color. So what is it about the ocean that makes it so interesting? Well, first you have the added temperatures. They usually sail around the equator. They sail with a shark research vessel, actually. And depending on the current state of how the weather is, depends on how the bourbon comes out. Sometimes it gives it a nice cask strength. Sometimes it gives it a very light, summery crispness to it. What it usually does, however, is it gives you all the flavors of bourbon, especially from the char, and it gives it like a salty taste. And what, in my opinion, does to it, makes it nice and smooth. A lot of people, when they take a shot of whiskey, it just notices that, oh, it burns. Well, first off, it depends on the whiskey you have. But Jefferson has always had a nice hearth fire smoke to it. You know, you smell the smoke of a fireplace. That one has always had that smokiness to it, added with being aged at sea. And we have a very fine product. Now, this is not the most affordable bottle you can find out there. Jefferson's Ocean is always a special release, mainly because they have different voyages they go on, and then they release a ton of them. Like I said, this is voyage 20. We just finished up with voyage 17. And it usually ranges anywhere between $60 to $100 when you're looking at this in a store. So when you buy Jefferson's Ocean, it's really for a special occasion, which is why I haven't opened it yet. Sad to say, unlike last time where I actually had some bourbon that I was drinking while I was doing this segment, I am on some new medication, and I can't have alcohol on this one. And it has more of a warning on that than any other medication I've had, so I'm playing it safe, and I'm deciding not to drink this bourbon with you here today. Have you had Jefferson's Ocean bourbon before? And if you have, let me know what you think. So, what type of game would I pair with Jefferson's bourbon? In this game, there is no bourbon, but it is something that is about the ocean, and that is Fleet the Dice Game. This is published by Eagle Gryphon Games, and this is Benjamin Pinchback and Matthew D. Riddle as the designers. In this current age of roll and writes, we're always looking for new ways to make them interesting. And Fleet the Dice Game was, until most recently, one of the more heavy Euro game style roll and writes I've ever played. And you really got some neat combos with it going on. And it's about sailing your ships out to get fish, lobster, shrimp, oysters, I think you have cod, king crab, all of that. And you're coming back and making money and then updating buildings and stuff like that. But for the pure fact that you're headed out and you're trying to get some fish and you're on a ship, it really kind of made me think, what would I pair with Jefferson's Ocean? And it was the only game that came to mind. This is not the only game we have about sailing, but for some reason this one stuck in my mind more than anything else. Fleet the Dice Game has been a favorite among many. It is quite different in the way it works in this era of the roll and write. And it stands out. And that's another thing why I chose this game with this bourbon. Jefferson's Ocean stands out to many people as one of the great companies to watch for when it comes to bourbon. Like I said, it's on the artisanal bourbon trail down in Kentucky when you're down there, but you can tell already by the footprint they have, not only in Connecticut, but I've seen it in other states as well. They're about to explode into one of the more known bourbon labels out there. And then with Fleet the Dice Game, in this world of roll and writes, you really have to stick out. You really have to deliver a product that's going to make people go, maybe I should go and take a look at that. Fleet the Dice Game does that as well. It's the only roll and write that we own that has 2 pads that you need to use for the roll and write. But I promise you, if you get a chance to play Fleet the Dice Game, it'll stick with you, and it's one of our favorites. I think for me, this one's like a 9.25. And like I said, don't take it. I would just be very careful. This is a heavy game as far as roll and writes are concerned. But once you know what you're doing, I would definitely say this is going to be one to remember. So check out Jefferson's Ocean. Check out Fleet the Dice Game. That's going to be the mash bill for today. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.